Hi folks, right, so we just did this question about usefulness and reliability, and I just want to give you some feedback on how it went. So to be honest, the answers weren't great, and it's not surprising because it's your first time doing this by yourself. So we do need a bit of practice with these, but I don't want you getting too worried about it and thinking you can't do it. You will be able to do it with a bit of practice. So the question asked, how useful is this source for an historian studying the reactions of the sorry, studying the reactions of the government of Northern Ireland. I'm down here. Where are we? Let me get this working. Here. So, how useful is this source to an historian studying the reactions of the government of Northern Ireland to the civil rights campaign? The historian is trying to work out how the government reacted to the uh, Northern Ireland civil rights movement. Keep that in your head. And this is what the historian is reading. They're reading this source, and you're being asked, how useful is that to the historian? Okay. Some of you said, things like it's useful because it shows you the government's viewpoint, but it doesn't show you Catholics' viewpoints or things like that. The historian is only studying the reactions of the government of Northern Ireland. They don't care about Catholic reactions. So it's just how useful is this and seeing the government's reaction. Now, let's have a read at my answer. So I told you that the way to answer this question about usefulness is to use DACO, D-A-C-O, date, author, content, and omissions. Right, so, and you don't do them in that order. If you look down the side here, you see I've done it author, content, date, omissions. But that's DACO or CADO, whatever way you want to remember it. So let's see. Source C is useful because it is from Terence O'Neill, the Prime Minister and the leader of the Northern Ireland government. Now, I probably should have added on to that. This is good for getting the view of the government. He is the leader of the government, so this is very useful to an historian studying the reactions of the government. The content is useful as he says he is sick of civil rights marches. This shows how frustrated he is and angry at the violence caused by the marches and counter demonstrations. Right? So, again, how useful is this to an historian studying the reactions of the government in Northern Ireland? Well, it's useful because we can see that the government is very frustrated, or the leader of the government, Terence O'Neill, is very frustrated. Then it goes on. The date is useful because it comes just after Burntollet, showing us how annoyed he was about this. Now, some of you just said very general things. The date is useful because it's 1969. That doesn't explain why it's useful. It's January 1969. This is when the civil rights movements are getting violent, or the civil rights marches are getting violent. If you remember, the first march in Dungannon in 1968 or 1968 was peaceful. Now the marches are getting violent. Okay, you had the October March in Derry in 1968, which ended in a riot. Then you had the Burntollet March, which ends in a riot. And you've got counter demonstrations with Ian Paisley. None of this I've seen mentioned in your answers. None of you talked about all the stuff you learned about the marches and about what happened at them and the water cannon and the batons. Well, here's your wee opportunity just to add on something about it. Because remember, you've got to show contextual knowledge. Contextual knowledge. So you've got to show that you understand what's going on at this time. And then finally, the omissions. However, we only see his point of view and not the point of view of other people in his government, which makes it less reliable or less useful, I suppose. Some of you put on for omissions that doesn't tell you the view of Paisley or doesn't tell you the view of the Catholics. But again, the historian is only interested in the reactions of the government. So that answer that I've written there would get 5 marks. Some of you got about 1 or 2 maybe. And that was the better answers. And it's just because you're just not doing the things that they're expecting you to do here. But you'll get more practice. Right, on the reliable side of things, the acronym to remember what to do is ADMIT. That's for author, date, motive, intended audience, type, and tone. Okay, and now you'll see these words down the side. Author, date, type, tone, motive, intended audience, and you see type again, where I've looked at it again. Right, so this time your focus is on reliability. So the author would be reliable as he is the Prime Minister and leader of the government. It's a reliable source. The date makes it reliable because it's from the time when the marches were happening and violence was occurring. The statement is a newspaper report, that's the type, which is reliable because newspapers have to report things as they were said. O'Neill's tone seems to be very angry, which may make it more reliable as we see his true feelings. O'Neill's motive seems to be trying to calm things down. He wants people to realise that NICRA marches and loyalist counter demonstrations could lead to death. I think this makes it more reliable as he is speaking to his people and begging for calm. However, as this is a public statement, we might not see O'Neill's private thoughts, making it less reliable. Okay, so you can see it's very different from the useful question. You're talking about the same things, but you're focusing on, can you believe what is said? Is this a reliable source? Right. Okay. I just thought I'd post this up just to help you. I know this is difficult, but they will get easier with practice.